to an officer-involved shooting with Tuscaloosa Police Department. Violent Crimes Unit's been out all night and throughout today. We still have quite a bit of work left to do in this case, but we do have a good bit of information that we can release, and we chose to release that to you now. This subject last night that was involved in this began a criminal crime spree that we know of so far at approximately 7 p.m. last night. So there's going to be a lot of information that I'm going to give out. Please hold your questions to the end. But last night, that'll be on the 7th, at approximately 7:34 p.m., a victim contacted the Tuscaloosa Police Department in regards to an incident of domestic violence. This victim reported that the suspect in this case, Jamarcus Garrett, had arrived at her home, of which he does not reside, forced his way into the home, was armed with a handgun, engaged in an argument with her, demanded and then took her keys and left the residence. She had been in a brief romantic relationship with him in the past, and she had recently filed for a protection from abuse order against Garrett that had been served on him, and a court date was pending on that. Tuscaloosa Police diligently responded, took a report, and began looking for Mr. Garrett. Several hours later, at approximately 9:31 p.m., the victim and other witnesses at her residence and in the neighborhood heard shots being fired outside of her residence. They also observed a silver Dodge Avenger driving down the street. The silver Dodge Avenger was recognized by the victim as belonging to Mr. Garrett. At that time, they did not realize, but learned later in the evening, that her vehicle had been struck multiple times by gunfire. Nonetheless, she called Tuscaloosa Police Department. They responded again, took a new report, and they began actively searching for Mr. Garrett. At this time, as he had already stolen her keys through an armed robbery and had come back and fired, at that time they believe fired a weapon around her house, and as we said later, we learned had actually struck her vehicle. She left for her safety, and Tuscaloosa Police issued a BOLO and began searching for Mr. Garrett. Several hours later, at 11:47 p.m., that victim's neighbors contacted 911 to report that her house was on fire. Tuscaloosa Police Department and the fire department responded and discovered fire damage and items on scene that led to the belief that this was indeed an arson. Again, based on these previous incidents, Mr. Garrett was a suspect in that as well. 10 minutes later, a Tuscaloosa police officer located that silver Dodge Avenger and attempted to stop it in relation to these cases. It refused to stop. The vehicle fled at a high rate of speed throughout downtown Tuscaloosa, at times over 100 miles per hour. During this pursuit, Mr. Garrett was firing a handgun at the officers that were pursuing him. At two different locations in Tuscaloosa, two different police vehicles were struck multiple times by gunfire from Mr. Garrett. Mr. Garrett then crashed into two private citizens' vehicles that were parked at the red light, waiting for the red light, at Veterans Memorial Parkway and McFarland Boulevard next to University Mall. Miraculously, neither one of those occupants was seriously injured. Upon striking those vehicles, he then struck 2 or 3 power poles and wrecked his vehicle and disabled it. The pursuing Tuscaloosa police officers set up a secure location and began to issue commands and began to develop a plan to try to approach the vehicle. They could see Mr. Garrett inside moving around after this accident. At that time, a gunshot was fired from inside of Mr. Garrett's vehicle, of which he was the sole occupant. One Tuscaloosa police officer fired 1 round in return. The officers then secured the area, and the SRT, the Tuscaloosa Police Department Special Response Team, responded. Throughout an extended standoff, Mr. Garrett refused to exit the vehicle. After an extended time, he was extricated from that vehicle. He was found to be injured from the wreck, as well as with a gunshot wound to the area of his neck. He's been transported to a secure medical facility at this time, and he is in stable condition. The Violent Crimes Unit was called out to assume the investigation into this case, and no personnel or supervisors affiliated with the Tuscaloosa Police Department are involved or will be involved in this case. At this time, whether or not Mr. Garrett's gunshot injury to his neck area is the result of a self-inflicted wound or the officer firing in self-defense is still under investigation. He is in stable condition. After reviewing copious amounts of video today from multiple sources, we had 4 or 5 different crime scenes. We had multiple victims to interview. And after that process was this afternoon, and after consultation with the Tuscaloosa District Attorney's Office, some charges have now been filed against Mr. Garrett. This investigation is ongoing, and it's very likely that more charges will come in the future. But at this time, Mr. Garrett's been charged with 2 counts of attempted murder of a police officer for both vehicles that he struck multiple times with a firearm during the pursuit. He has a combined cash bond of $2 million for those 2 counts. He's also been charged with 1 count of burglary in the first degree under the domestic violence statute and a count of robbery in the first degree. In both of those charges, there is no bond pursuant to the Anais law that the legislature passed last year. All right. His full name is Jamarcus Dwayne Garrett. He's 33 years of age, and he is from the Tuscaloosa area. And as I mentioned before, this case is still under investigation, and there are multiple other incidents throughout that evening that we are looking at, and it is likely that more charges will result.
Captain, I guess it's standard protocol, if you will, that the officer fired the shot. Is he on leave, I guess, until further notice?
Yeah, that's up to the policies of the agency that officer worked for. So I'm not going to speak to that, but that is standard policy for every agency that I know of, and in this case it is as well. The Violent Crimes Unit is not going to get involved in administrative policies. We're merely going to be involved into the investigation of any criminal acts and investigating of the shooting itself. So,
had the victim ever called about him ever before to complain?
Yes, there were some reports on file in the past, and those were the basis of her application for the protection from abuse order that was pending. It is notable to mention that he had no criminal history as in arrest, and that in this case he did not. So,
how many days do those protective orders typically take?
I can't speak to that. He was served with a summons for a court date on January the 24th, and that court date was pending, I believe, in the month of February.
Why do you think he did all this?
That's up for him to explain to us one day. I know none of it was necessary, and he created victims and an array of destruction throughout the entire city of Tuscaloosa. And I don't have this here now, but during that pursuit, from the video that I've seen personally, the officers did exactly things according to policy and protocol, including not riding up on that vehicle, and he endangered multiple persons' lives in this pursuit, and in multiple cases that we've been able to observe from cameras that are on publicly accessible, properties, and from the dash cams and stuff from the officers. There are multiple persons out there that, by the grace of God, were not injured during during his flight.
So it appears at this point, based on the evidence that you've gathered, this appears to have been a justifiable situation by the police officers.
Yeah, that is still going to be under investigation, and at the end of this, the officer involved shooting will be reported as a separate incident to the grand jury of Tuscaloosa County for evaluation. But as of now, after consultation with the district attorney's office, we don't have any probable cause at this time of a crime.
When do you think we could possibly be getting more information about this?
What other information are you asking? Because I'm going to be pretty free with this one.
Talking about the other charges that might be brought against him.
Yeah, any other charges that would come out, I would release to the public.
And I just want to make a statement real quick. I'm very proud of the way Tuscaloosa police officers handle this situation. Anytime you have somebody shooting at an officer, it's a dangerous society and endangers those officers. They came to work that night to do their job and protect the citizens of Tuscaloosa, and they did that. We did our job. He's arrested. He's in jail. Now it's up to the justice system and the judges to put this guy away. You shoot at more than 2 of our police officers, you need to go away for the rest of your life to prison. And I think it's time we take a hard look at the sentencing guidelines and the way that these people are being sentenced. Also on that with our pursuits, Alabama needs to take a hard look at our attempting to elude charges. Right now they're misdemeanors. They need to be felonies. The pursuits are very, very dangerous. They're high speed now, and Alabama needs to take a good look at pursuits and get stiffer penalties on when you run from the police, because it's a danger to the city. We had two vehicles that were crashed into this. He had no regard for anybody on the road, no regard for the citizens of Tuscaloosa or the police. So, we want justice in this case. We want him sentenced for a long time. I hope he never gets out of prison.
And this is one of those situations, Chief, where the guys did what they were supposed to, and fortunately, no one was dead because of it.
Yeah, their training in this case, I'm very proud of the way they acted. I arrived on scene very quickly. They couldn't have done any better than they did. They're highly trained. You never know what's going to happen with a stressful environment, but our special response team, our patrol officers, I want to thank the Tuscaloosa County Sheriff's Office, Northport, and UA. Everybody came together. There was probably over 40 cars out there, 40 or 50 officers from different agencies. That's when we come together with something like this. But I can't stress enough that this is the time that, we want this guy sent away for the rest of his life. If he's willing to do this, he's a violent felon, he needs to be sent away.
During the height of the chase, how many officers were in pursuit, if you will? Any way of knowing?
I don't have that before me, but it was not excessive at the time of the chase. The pursuit covered a great distance in town, but it was for a short period of time because of the excessive speed that he was in. And he had already exhibited an extreme danger to the victim in this case. He had been to her house 3 times, burned it down, shot into her car. And this is just me speaking personally, but we had to do all that we could to take this subject into custody last night to try to protect her and the public.
And Commander, I guess it goes without saying that this could have been a much worse situation had this happened during rush hour in the morning or PM on the far right.
Undoubtedly.
So the chase was warranted.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
What do you think is going through the heads of the people that are responding to something like this? How do you think that feels to be going on a high-speed chase and not only be worrying for your safety, but also the safety of the citizens around you that probably have no idea that this is going on?
There's a lot that goes into that. These officers, like I said, they come to work every day to protect the citizens of Tuscaloosa, but they get under high stress, and they train for this. But until it happens, you never know how you're going to react. And I couldn't be prouder of the way those officers, responded in this case. They did everything right. But as a department, we also, for our officers, we'll make sure, they have EAP, because it's very traumatic. I mean, you have bullets, hitting your car while you're driving. So we want to make sure they get the mental health that they need as well. So it's not just the incident happens and it's over. There's a lot of follow-up to something like this.
And this all started from a domestic violence call. And not thinking that it would probably go any further. Is this something that maybe opens your all's eyes to maybe more calls that you could get on domestic violence, and this could be an outcome that these victims, they are scared, things like that?
Domestic violence calls are some of the most dangerous calls we go on. They're very highly unpredictable, and you never know what's going to turn out with them. So we work with domestic violence, advocates, and try and get women and men that are victims of domestic violence as much help as they can get. And that's why there's also a mandatory hold in the state of Alabama if you get arrested. Unfortunately, on a lot of calls, the suspect is already gone. If the suspect would have been here on this, it may have turned out differently. But these were the hand that we were dealt that night, and our officers did everything to do to get the guy in custody, because he's definitely a danger to society.
Can you just walk us through really quick where this high-speed chase went through again? Because he was at her house and then he drove and then he crashed into the car.
I'm not going to identify where her house was for her
Right.
privacy and protection, but it was on the western side of Tuscaloosa. But I want to mention to you, you're talking about the domestic violence calls. Where they acquired him was not near the victim's house. So when these incidents were going on, the police department's patrol officers were actively searching for him. Okay, so he was acquired in the area of Greensboro Avenue, near James I. Harrison on Greensboro. The pursuit went south to Skyland Boulevard, and then it turned around. It came back up Greensboro to here, downtown Tuscaloosa. It actually went through Timerson Square at one point. It then cut back through downtown Tuscaloosa to 15th Street, then went east on 15th Street until he crashed into the innocent folks that are diligently waiting on a red light. And because of that, he wasn't going to stop if that hadn't happened. because that crash caused him to then crash into an Alabama power pole, which is what actually caused him to stop, so.
Thank y'all.
Yep.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Did we get a release?
Yeah, I'll email this out to y'all as soon as I get to my office downstairs.